All right, New Testament readers, we are in week 7. Can you believe it? Here we go. How's it going? We hope that this is becoming a regular habit for you, this matter of Bible reading, that you're enjoying it, that you're finding things that are familiar, perhaps, but also some things that are new. This week we're going to finish the Gospel of Matthew. We're coming to the expected story of the cross and the empty tomb. And really the climax of all of the Gospels is in this material. And then we're going to be starting the Gospel of Mark. So let's watch for some things in these chapters of Matthew. Notice the way that Jesus will interpret his death and resurrection with the disciples, with the Passover meal. He's going to identify himself with the elements of Passover as a way of saying his death is like one of the sacrifices in the temple. He is dying for the sins of his people. He's dying to bring them forgiveness of sins. And by this means, he is ushering in God's kingdom. So there's a way in which the whole Bible is kind of coming into focus in that identification. Jesus warns his disciples they're all going to fall away. He knows about Judas' betrayal. He knows about Peter's denials, and he knows the rest of the disciples are going to flee when the pressure comes. Yet he's going to welcome them back when they do come. And he's going to say, you go before me to Galilee. After I've raised from the dead, and I will meet you. And that's exactly what he does. Jesus in the garden is going to pray to God the Father for relief. Let this cup pass from me. Jesus doesn't want to die any more than you or I do. Being the divine Son of God doesn't insulate him from human feelings and from that strong revulsion of death that we'd naturally have. But he says, nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Ultimately, Jesus the Son makes the will of the Father his will. And it's not a cruel will. It's a good will. It's a will for the benefit of humankind. And so Hebrews will say it was for the joy set before him that Jesus endured the cross. And we see that idea in this story. Jesus is going to surrender to those who come to arrest him. He's not going to put up a defense at his trials. He's going to show along the way that he knows exactly what is going on. He is in control of the situation, and we should never read the story as if Jesus is overcome or overwhelmed or there are forces that he just couldn't cope with. No, he is aware of everything. He's in control of everything, and when his life is taken, no, he really gives his life willingly. Jesus' opponents through this are going to show themselves to be lying power seekers. If we haven't caught on to that previously, this is very much who they are. And as Matthew portrays Jesus' death, he's going to kind of lay over it some Old Testament texts to interpret these. He's going to show us from the Psalms that Jesus is dying as the righteous of God have always suffered at the hands of evildoers. So he's going to make extensive use of Psalm 22, pulling language from there to describe Jesus' death as a way of saying, look, just as we've sung this psalm in the past to call out to God for relief in our suffering, Jesus is suffering the same kind of thing. He suffers with us. But he's also going to lay over it Isaiah 53, the song of the servant of God who gives his life for the sake of the sinful people of God who have rejected him. Well, that is very much the story of Jesus, and it means God is bringing forgiveness to his people through this death. Jesus suffers with us, Psalm 22. Jesus dies for us, Isaiah 53. And that's all embedded in this story of Jesus' death. Now, Jesus' resurrection on the third day is going to come as a complete surprise to everyone, even though he has foretold it many times. The women at the tomb are going to be witnesses. They're going to tell the men. They're going to become the first gospel preachers. Matthew's going to see that all these people see Jesus. Some worshiped him, but some doubted. People are going to be divided even at this point. And Jesus is going to send his disciples as his ambassadors then into the world. He's going to say, make disciples of all nations. This is how God will bless all the nations, as he promised to Abraham. And he ends the book by saying, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So we began with the promise of God with us from Isaiah, and now Jesus concludes with that promise. Now we're also going to begin the Gospel of Mark, and everything you're going to read in Mark, or nearly everything, you're going to find was also in the Gospel of Matthew. Slight differences along the way. Why are these Gospels so repetitive? Well, we call them synoptic Gospels, meaning see together, because they do have so much similar material. But in the way that Mark has brought the story together, he's going to emphasize action and interaction. So no infancy narrative here, nothing about Jesus' birth. We start right in with John the Baptist, Jesus' baptism. He goes into the wilderness. He calls his first followers, and then he's going to perform miracles and wonders in Capernaum and beyond, show himself superior to disease, to evil spirits, to impurity. He's going to do what God alone can do. And so we'll see, as the very beginning of the Gospel of Mark will say, this is the beginning of the gospel of Jesus, the Son of God. Well, happy reading as you continue with the Bible read along, finishing Matthew and beginning the Gospel of Mark.